Hello, welcome to this webinar on Introduction to Strength Training presented by Renew Physical Therapy. I'm Kent Timm, the Managing Director of the Renew Clinic in Bay Road, Saginaw Township. We're at 3901 Bay Road, just south of McCarty and just across the street from Genji's Restaurant and Discount Tire. I'm here today to give you an introduction to strength training. Now, this is designed to be literally a starting point of some of the basic fundamentals for strength training. This may get frustrating for some of the folks attending because we're not going to be able to provide a whole lot of detailed information for specific problems. So, for example, if you're tuning in, say, I want to learn more about how to strengthen my knee, or I want to learn more about how to strengthen my shoulder, we'll be able to give you some of the fundamental information that underlies strength training for those areas, but we won't be able in this webinar to give you detailed instructions that are joint or problem specific. We, however, hope to be able to do that in future webinars. A little bit about myself. As you can see from the title slide here, I've got a fair number of credentials after my name, more letters than are actually in my name. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I have a PhD in exercise physiology. I have 2 board certifications through the American Board of Physical Therapy Specialties, one in orthopedic physical therapy, the other in sports physical therapy. I'm a certified athletic trainer. I'm a fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine. I'm also a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and I've had the unique opportunity to be part of the medical staff of the United States Olympic Committee for the Olympic Games in 1996 in Atlanta, 2000 in Australia, and 2002 in Salt Lake. In addition to that, I was part of the medical staff for the United States Soccer Federation for the 1999 Women's World Cup, and currently participate with United States Track and Field in various sorts of research and advisory capacities. But all this is information may be nice to know, but it's not very helpful if it doesn't help you, the participant, get the information you need to get and be able to strength train safely and effectively. So as we go on, if you have questions, there is a Q&A button that's part of the webinar setup. Feel free to click that Q&A button, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll do our best to answer any and all of those questions. Regardless, after today, if you have questions or if I could be in a position to help, please feel free to give us a call at the Bay Road location, area code 989-401-5282, or send me an email at ktimm@renuept.com. That's ktimm@renewpt.com, and we'll present that information near the end of the presentation. So let's go forward here a little bit. Okay, what we're going to talk about here, the information I'm going to present, is based upon some legitimate sources of information. This is not just something I've made up or come up with myself. It's based upon hard science and hard information that's been researched over the last 50 years and has been published in various forms, but basically summarizes information from the American College of Sports Medicine, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, which of course nowadays is more famous to us because of the COVID-19 crisis, and also the US Surgeon General's report, starting with Dr. C. Everett Koop and coming up through the current Surgeon General. In general, or to summarize as we begin, it's been found that Adults in the United States need at least 150 minutes of exercise in addition to their normal activities each week to help ensure basic overall health. Now, 150 minutes is basically 30 minutes, 5 days a week. And this would be above and beyond the normal activities. So if you are fairly vigorous, if you're a situation where you have a job where your normal day is fairly labor intensive, this actually means you need some additional activity in order to maintain basic health. On the other hand, if you're, say, a more sedentary worker, it means that in order to become or to basically maintain an optimal level of health, you need that at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week to help promote and take care of yourself. Now, this activity could be in a variety of different forms, or this exercise could be in a variety of different forms, again, above and beyond your routine activities, your normal things that you do on a daily basis. One of these options is strength training. It's been found that strength training is a very beneficial type of exercise. Now, strength training by itself can be somewhat controversial because too often folks think of strength training as something where you get big muscles, or you look like a bodybuilder or a weightlifter or Arnold Schwarzenegger, or you have to take a lot of steroids to get those big muscles. And that's not the case at all. Strength training can take place in a variety of different forms, many of which are very easy to do and will have lifelong lasting benefits for the people who are using them. So let's move on here just a little bit. Here are some of the proven benefits, and there are a multitude of them. And this is not any kind of speculation. There is hard evidence on millions of subjects that show that strength training in some form can definitively improve someone's health. It can help with coronary artery disease. In other words, you can prevent heart attacks or help to prevent heart attacks. It can help to prevent and to treat depression. There's more and more literature coming out each month that shows that in the correct form, exercise and strength training can help folks to decrease the level of anti-anxiety drugs or other sorts of things to help treat depression. As I mentioned before, or just a moment ago, strength training can help prevent coronary artery disease, which prevents the possibility of heart attacks. Strength training can also help to lower blood pressure. If you're from my age group, and I'm 61 years old now, it used to be back in the day when I was in high school and was taught stuff in gym class. How many people have gym classes nowadays? But that's a whole other story. But it was taught in gym class. You have to avoid some types of strengthening activities because it could raise your blood pressure. Studies have found that over time, it actually reduces blood pressure. So folks who are on hypertension medications may be able to decrease the level of their medication under physician supervision if they add strength training to their daily regimen. Strength training has also been found to decrease the risk of strokes and TIAs, transient ischemic attacks, or mini strokes. So folks who are older can help reduce the risk of having a stroke and having the late-term effects following a stroke and preventing those episodes of mini strokes. Someone with diabetes, not so much type 1 where you're insulin dependent, but type 2 diabetes as the results of obesity or lifestyle changes, strength training has been found to decrease the risk of diabetes. It's also been found to be a helpful adjunct to medical treatments for diabetes. Folks with type 2 diabetes who also strength train don't require as much medication and require fewer medications to keep their blood glucose under control. Strength training has been found to help reduce and treat the effects of osteoarthritis. It's sometimes a little bit of a paradox because folks assume that if I get more active, I'm going to put more wear and tear on my joints. That's not the case because as you get more active, as your muscles get stronger, it actually decreases pressure on the joints which decreases the risk of osteoarthritis. The best analogy, and I give this to patients quite frequently, is it's like a car that you're going to try to take off-road. May not be such a good idea, but if you separate or put in a set of off-road shock absorbers, heavy-duty shock absorbers, your car may be able to go off-road. So the way to do that in the human body is to strengthen the muscles, and studies have shown that by strengthening the muscles, it helps decrease the pressure on the joint, which helps to decrease the effects of osteoarthritis, which helps keep people joint pain-free. Strength training has also been found to help decrease the effects of osteoporosis. So folks with the brittle bone scenario don't have to take as much medicine. So through strength training, they basically develop better bone, decreased risk of falling, and then decreased risk of injury. Also overall, epidemiological research has indicated that in terms of all causes of mortality, all possible causes of dying prematurely, strength training lowers that risk in basically everybody. As I mentioned just a moment ago, it also helps decrease the risk of falling. As folks get older, there's a tendency to have an increased risk of falling, which can lead to catastrophic problems. But the stronger you are, the less the risk of falling. And that's been shown definitively. Strength training has also been found to decrease the incidence and the risk of non-fatal diseases. And this has been found to take place in folks who have a familial genetic predisposition to some of the big nasty things, such as rheumatoid arthritis or lupus erythematosus or ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. So the stronger people are, the less the chance that they will develop problems, even if it's in their family line genetically. And last but not least, strength training helps convert body fat into muscle or healthy tissue, which helps to decrease the effects of obesity. So these are some of the proven health benefits. This is not any kind of speculation. There is hard science from a variety of different professions that point to these sorts of benefits. And that's why it's important to be aware of strength training as a possible self-help regimen to help yourself stay healthy and less painful. So let's move on here a little bit. Now, here are some of the fundamentals that we're going to talk about. So this would be called, you could kind of call this Strength Training 101. Now, when we talk about strength training, realize, I'm sure most people attending this webinar realize there are many possibilities out there, from gyms to workout facilities to home stuff and whatever else, to videos, to podcasts or whatever. None of the information we're presenting here is intended or designed to go against anything out there. This is not saying that X and so is better than this facility or this gym or anything such as that. We're talking about here the fundamental ideas that underlie every gym, every workout, every group fitness class out there. So these are the things that all those different programs, all those different approaches to strength training and working out are based upon. So some of the things that we're going to talk about would include equipment possibilities, the idea of how to work or what muscle groups are needed to get a good strength training effect, something called dosage. In other words, how often do I do it? Do I need to do it daily? Do I, as I mentioned before, we're looking at 150 minutes a week. Does that mean I have to do it exactly 30 minutes, exactly 5 days a week, or can I vary that a little bit? How many repetitions do I need to do? I've been a physical therapist since 1982, and when I was in physical therapy school, we were taught to teach everyone do 3 sets of 10. Well, 3 sets of 10 is not the best way to do things based upon the available research. It's a possibility, but there may be other possibilities that work even better. Then we have some things called sets. How many sets do we do? Or what's a set in the first place? Rest. How long do you rest in between exercise sessions? How long do you rest in between sets of exercises? How long do you rest in between repetitions? We'll talk about rest. And then progression. How do I start? How do I continue? Do I do the same thing all the time? Because if I do, it's probably going to get a little bit boring. So how do I progress safely so I avoid injury and keep it fun and interesting? So let's go on from here. When we talk about equipment, one of the basics is your body weight. You can strength train effectively, just doing things with your own body weight. Free weights and gyms and everything else are nice, but it's possible to get a definitive, positive strength training effect that addresses all the benefits we mentioned in a previous slide, just using your body weight. Free weights, such as dumbbells, are nice, and they're relatively inexpensive, but still there's an expense involved with that. So if you are interested in things such as that, free weights are a great option. There is nothing at all wrong with them. There are other ways to go about that, though. In other words, using household objects. So, I mean, things that you might find sitting around the house. You don't necessarily need to buy fancy free weights or whatever else or fancy equipment. You can just use things that are around the house, such as, in this case, we're going to demonstrate some stuff. This is a can of diced tomatoes, which I happen to have in my pantry at home. So I've just brought this in as a possible way to, we'll demonstrate some things with this. So this is a household object. Another household object may be something like this, which is, a beverage. This weighs more than the body. So these are just examples of stuff that are around the house that you can use for strength training. If you've gone to a gym, you realize there are many types of gym machines. There are gym machines in workout facilities. There are gym types of machines in physical therapy facilities. And some of them are very, very effective. In fact, a lot of them are very, very effective. It's a matter of using them appropriately. And this is where if you do join a health club or come to a physical therapy facility, this is where you need some degree of instruction and supervision, because if you're not using the machine correctly, you may not be getting the benefit you want, or heaven forbid, you may be causing yourself some damage, some injury. But it's a scenario that you don't need weight machines to train effectively. If you want to, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And then finally, if nothing else, there are resistance bands, stretch bands, latex things, or different sorts of bungee cords sorts of situations, which also involve some degree of resistance to help with strength training. Whether it's your body weight or free weights or household objects, gym machines, or resistance bands, the idea is we're putting the muscles under more work than would be done in your common everyday routine. And that's the key to developing strength. Subjecting the muscles to more activity, more resistance than is the norm, because that's how they develop strength. Okay, let's proceed onward. Now, when we talk about strength training, we can talk very, very selectively and get into the fine minutia of trying to look at every single muscle group, but that's not necessarily practical, at least at the introductory level. That may be the point of future webinars. If people are interested in specific sorts of things for specific parts, we can certainly do that. But for our purposes here today, as introductory, let's just look at the general groups that someone needs to address through strength training in order to improve their health and to stay physically fit. With the upper extremities, the arms, we're looking at the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist. Certainly we have the hand. The hand typically kind of works, at least at the introductory level, with the wrist, and so that's kind of incorporated there. Again, if we get to the point where we have folks who are interested in hand-specific exercise, we can do a future webinar just on the hand if you'd like. or we could do it just on the elbow or just on the shoulder. But for our presentation here today, we're going to link the wrist, the elbow, and the shoulder all together. Then next we have the spine involving the neck, the upper back, and the lower back. Functionally, the spine works out there in the real world together. The neck rarely operates separately than the lower back or the upper back. And we could go into future webinars with neck-specific exercises or lower back-specific exercises, but for our presentation today, we're just going to talk about the spine as a continuous unit, neck attached to upper, attached to lower. And then finally, we have the lower extremities, the hip, the knee, and the ankle. And this may be a point of a lot of interest for future webinars because there are certainly a lot of folks out there who are active, athletic, and are more prone to, say, some knee and ankle problems or some hip problems as opposed to maybe elbow and wrist problems. But again, that's the subject for possible future webinars. We're going to address the lower extremities today, basically from the introductory level. Now, there is some controversy out there. If you've been a member of a gym, or if you have friends who weight train or strength train, that you may get caught in the circumstance of what's better. Do I train one joint at a time? In other words, using the upper extremity for the example, do I have to do some stuff specifically at the wrist and then some stuff at the elbow and then some stuff at the shoulder, or can I combine everything together? The research has found that whole body or whole limb exercises are better than single joint or muscle exercises in terms of overall strength training, at least to develop strength at the introductory level. So if you're someone who's trying to get stronger overall, it would be better to select whole body or whole limb activities as opposed to focusing doing something at the wrist and then something at the elbow and then something at the shoulder. It would be better to try to combine everything together. However, if you're an experienced weight trainer, if you're, say, an athlete or someone who's trying to get to a higher level of function, this is where we would look at your particular goals, and this is where we might need to get a little bit more fine tuning for your specific needs. So to begin with, as a generalization, whole body or whole limb is better than single joint, but there's nothing wrong at all with single joint because single joint, single muscle exercises are also very effective. They're more effective once you've built a general base of strength through the whole body. Once that base is built, then you can look at single joint, single muscle exercises to build things even more dynamically and specifically for your own individual needs. Okay, let's talk about dosage. How often do you exercise? How often should you exercise? The exercise dosage at the entry level, at the beginner or the introductory level, is suggested at each major muscle group or joint system. In this case, it would be upper extremity, lower extremity, back, 2 to 3 days per week. Now that's basically the minimum. That doesn't mean you don't necessarily have to do it only 2 to 3 days per week. We'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about the rest component. There is nothing wrong with the concept of strength training daily. In fact, part of the rehabilitation process for folks who come to physical therapy with a muscle or joint disorder, we teach them home exercises because the idea is they're going to be doing something on a daily basis to help themselves continue to get better in between physical therapy sessions. So strength training activities on a daily basis is not a problem, but it's looking based upon the literature that's been done, again, from Surgeon General, CDC, American College of Sports Medicine, 2 to 3 days a week is needed, okay? And as the other part of the slide shows, if you're talking about whole body or whole limb, it's a better effect early on. There's nothing wrong with single muscle or single joint, but doing whole body or whole limb early on helps you save time. So you can get the work done that you need to get done with a minimum amount of time and still have the benefits. And that's the important thing, doing what's necessary to get the benefits that someone needs to improve their health and stay healthy. Repetitions. Now, this may be another area of some degree of controversy depending upon who you talk to, what you read, which gym you go to, and things of that regard. And this is another generalization. This does not say if you go to a particular gym and the trainer there said, do this exercise this number of times, I'll defer to their judgment because they would hopefully know you and your situation more than I do just through a webinar. So we're just presenting the generalities, if nothing else, the starting point. If you're looking for pure muscle strength, and muscle strength would be if you need to have better strength to lift. If lifting things at home or lifting things out there in the real world of work or whatever are difficult, you need to train for strength to make that lifting easier. And with that being said, to train for strength, you're looking at 8 to 12 repetitions of an exercise. If you can't do 8, the exercise weight you're dealing with is too heavy and needs to be modified. If you can do more than 12, it's too light. And it would be in your best interest to increase it if you're training for strength. However, if you're training for muscle endurance, exercise for muscle endurance in order to do a particular task for a longer period of time. If you have to do a particular task and say you get tired after 5 minutes, but the real task requires 10 minutes, you would train for muscle endurance to allow you to do that task without getting tired for the full 10 minutes. So if you're training for muscle endurance, the target would be 15 to 20 repetitions. If you can't do 15 and you're training for endurance, the weight or the activity needs to be adjusted. And if you can do more than 20, you really need to change the activity or the resistance because you're not doing things as efficiently as you could do. Again, there's nothing wrong with doing more than 20, but if you want to save time and be absolutely efficient, then you can adjust it in that way. Okay, let's move on here. Now, in terms of sets, and this may be another area of controversy, and if you're into weight training or into bodybuilding or whatever else, there's a lot of different variations out there. And they're really designed for the intended purpose of the individual. This again is the introductory level and the generalization. To train for both muscle strength and endurance, you need to look at 1 to 3 sets of each exercise. So basically, you need to keep the exercise comfortable. This is where we bring in something that in the clinic we call the kick principle. We've all heard the adage of no pain, no gain. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you need to make sure it's applied in the correct context. If you're someone who's already strong and want to get stronger, you may subject yourself into this no pain, no gain in order to get a higher level of strength. However, if you're just starting strength training, if you're coming off of an injury, if you have a history of some medical problems, no pain, no gain is not going to benefit you. It's going to run the risk of making you worse before you get better. So this is where the keep it comfortable principle comes in. You need to keep the exercises comfortable. If you're experiencing pain while doing the exercise, something is not right. You need to get things adjusted or you need to get looked at. As you're doing activities at the introductory level, keep the exercise comfortable. Now, different exercises are experienced in different ways by different individuals. So while we say 1 to 3 sets, that doesn't necessarily mean that 2 sets are better than 1 or that 3 are better than 2. 4 doesn't work quite so well. So more than 3, not so much. You run the risk of injury at the introductory level. And certainly less than 1, there's no point because you're not strength training. You're basically not doing anything to help yourself get better. So you can combine things a little bit. For example, in the slide it shows, besides keeping the exercises comfortable, there's nothing wrong at all with doing 3 sets for a particular exercise for the legs, if your legs are, a little bit in better shape than your arms, and then combine it with 1 set for the arms. There's nothing wrong with that at all. You're going to get the benefits of strength training. So there's a little bit of mixing and matching. There's also not a problem with variation day to day. Just because you did 3 sets of a particular exercise yesterday doesn't necessarily mean it's going to feel comfortable doing it today. So there is some variation, and it is not a problem to go from 3 sets one day to 2 sets or 1 set as long as it's comfortable. Now, in terms of rest, this is a situation where it does get a little bit, not so much controversial as it's kind of, people become a little bit counterproductive because they tend to get very, very fired up in strength training. People tend to forget that rest is necessary in between sets, in between exercise days, to allow the body to heal itself and to avoid the possibility of tissue injury. The best analogy is, if you don't give yourself enough rest, it's like trying to run a car on an empty tank of gasoline. It's not going to work, and the car is going to break down. So in terms of general guidelines for rest, in between sets of an exercise, allow a good 2 to 3 minutes. Now, this is going to seem like an eternity when you first start exercising, because you've just done something. It may take just several seconds, and I got to rest 2 to 3 minutes. This is a protective way to avoid possible problems at the muscle and joint level, and this is based on hardcore scientific data. If you're talking about training for a single muscle group or a single exercise, and previously we mentioned that whole body or whole limb exercise is preferable at the introductory level. If you choose to do a single muscle exercise, the classic being the bicep curl, and obviously I don't have the biggest bicep in the world. I can make it look bigger, but that's not the case. If I were just doing things for my bicep, here today on Thursday, I'd be doing an exercise. I'd be waiting 2 to 3 minutes and then doing a second set and a third set. If I'm just going to work my biceps, a single muscle, what I need to do to rest appropriately is to wait 2 or 3 days in between training sessions for a single muscle. So if I do my biceps today, I better not try it again for my own benefit until Saturday, because if I try it tomorrow, that's not 2 days later, that's 1 day later. Or if I don't want to do it Saturday, I can do it Sunday. So that's the format for a single muscle group. Now, you can mix and match this, as the bottom part of the slide says. After a session of 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps of biceps curls, which is a single muscle group, you wait 2 to 3 days before another exercise session of biceps curls. But that doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, I'm doing my biceps today. Can I exercise tomorrow? Can I do something for my legs tomorrow? Absolutely. It's this 2 to 3 day waiting period for single muscle activity that we need to be aware of, where we need to avoid overwork. Pardon me just a second. So let's move on. Now, here comes, this gets a little bit confusing. Here comes a little bit of math, but it's something that people need to be aware of. People, when they start strength training, tend to progress more quickly than is really indicated. The work that's been done indicates that to progress, you should increase the weight being lifted by no more than 2 to 10% when you're able to do 2 more repetitions than the target number, okay? Recall one of the prior slides that for building strength, you're doing 8 to 12 repetitions. So if I can do 14 repetitions, that says, okay, I'm safe to progress. For training for muscle endurance, we're doing 15 to 20 repetitions. So that means if I can do 22 repetitions, then it's safe to progress. So as the slide shows here, example 1, if today I'm lifting 10 pounds for 10 repetitions, the next time I'm training, I'm going to stay at 10 pounds because I can only do 10 reps, which falls in the 8 to 10 category for muscle strength development. Now, however, if today I'm lifting 10 pounds and I was able to do 14, 14 is more than the 12 for muscle strengthening. So next time I would increase it by up to 10%, which is, in this case, 10% of 10 is 1. So I'd increase the weight to 11 pounds. So this is how things work. People tend to get so very excited and they tend to get competitive with other folks. And well, X and so, or this person over here can do 10 pounds, therefore I should be able to do 20 pounds. We need to avoid those sorts of things because you get yourself into trouble. And if you wish to become a competitive weightlifter, that's possible. That's when those things matter, but that's far down the road from introduction to strength training. Now, when you are strength training, how are you going to feel? In most cases, later that day, you're going to be, I'm tired, but I feel good. My muscles feel good. I feel real good. This was fun. This is going to be good stuff. I'm raring to go. Guess what? The next morning, ooh, I'm feeling muscles I haven't felt in a while. That old knee is moving quite slowly, or my lower back is a little bit stiff and sore. It feels like I got hit by a Mack truck, those sorts of situations. Then comes the real kicker, the day after that. This is where physiologically the concept of delayed onset muscle soreness occurs. And the day after the first strength training session, you may be thinking, holy, insert your favorite expletive, what have I done? That's just the way the body adapts. This is new and different. This may be somewhat troublesome. The ironic paradox is, how do you take care of that? It's something called, and this has been proven physiologically, the repeated bout effect. The best way to feel less sore from strength training is to strength train, as long as you're following in or following the rest intervals and things. Because each time after each session, you're going to feel less and less sore. The physiological principle is called the SAID principle, specific adaptation to imposed demand. That's how the body adapts. That's how you get stronger. And I've told patients in the clinic on numerous occasions, if someone can find a legal, non-injurious way of eliminating delayed onset muscle soreness, they'd be the next Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or you name the famous person out there. There's no way to do that without causing physiologic damage, if only that were the case. So while this is going to get frustrating, this may be a circumstance where you might need to give your primary care provider a call or give your physical therapist a call and say, hey, I just started doing this. I'm feeling this. They should be able to talk you through what's going on and help make sure that you are progressing appropriately with the minimum amount of discomfort. Because after all, if you get too much discomfort, you're going to get frustrated and the possibility of wanting to continue for your benefit is going to decrease. Now, this is very important. As you're strength training, we just mentioned delayed onset muscle soreness, but if you start getting pain in your joints, pain in the muscles is one thing, and that's to be expected. If I'm doing my biceps curl, that example, and I've got pain in my bicep, that's to be expected. But if I'm getting pain in my elbow, or if I'm getting pain in my shoulder, that is not expected. If you're starting to get joint pain, you need to stop and contact your doctor, your physical therapist, because you may be showing bone, ligament, or tendon damage. And that needs to get looked at, that needs to be treated or managed so you can continue to strength train appropriately. If you're getting pain in the muscles, as we just mentioned, exercise is scheduled. It's counterintuitive, but muscle pain, the repeated bout effect, muscle pain decreases with subsequent training sessions. The best way to treat muscle pain is through strength training exercise. Now, at this point, I'm going to try to demonstrate some things, and this could be interesting because I need to move the camera and stuff. But here are a list of some sample exercises. And again, these are out there from the American College of Sports Medicine and CDC as just examples of some things that people can do with minimum equipment at home to start the process of strength training. And so these would be kind of things to try at home. If you find that they help, that's great. If not, we can make arrangements through future webinars or consults or whatever else to help you find what will work for you. So bear with me as we try this. This could become a real unique sort of situation and hopefully not a disaster. In no particular order, some things that can be done, making sure I can see it, and hopefully you can, are things known as heel raises or toe raises, where you're basically kind of standing up, maybe supported against a counter or something, and you're basically just kind of going up on your toes. It's not you're doing something like this. You just kind of go nice and up, easy, hold it for a moment, and bring it back down. This is working the muscles of your calves, but it's also working the ankles and indirectly the knees and the hips. So this would be a lower body activity, and you can apply the principles. I could do 8 to 12 reps for muscle strength development, or try for 15 to 20 for muscle endurance development. If I find that I can do more, then I need to adjust somehow in order to progress the exercise. Now, the next one on the list is squatting. Now, squatting, we need to make a little bit of a minor sort of thing here. Now, you don't need something like this, which is a yardstick, but I have this here to try to illustrate a point, because there are right and wrong ways to squat. If you're squatting down like this and you find that your knees are coming in front of your toes, that's going to cause wear and tear on the knees. A correct squat, and this may take some help from a family member or a clinician or someone at your gym. The correct way to squat is really kind of like you're sitting down. So the idea is the correct way to squat without damaging your knees, your ankles, and your hips is to make sure that the knee does not come any further forward than the toe. Because if the knee's coming forward, this is what's going on. The yardstick moves forward. So basically I have this here just to kind of show you this is the correct way to squat without limiting or causing problems elsewhere in the body. Now, what about the lower back? Pardon me as I just kind of get this configured a little bit. I'm going to take a small towel, roll it up, put it behind my back, and you can do this with a pillow cushion or something, and you can see it hopefully a little bit. What you can do is just kind of gently push back this way. Hold it for a moment or two, and just kind of come forward. This is a way to strengthen the lower back muscles. And indirectly, all of the exercises that we're kind of showing here will have an effect for the back muscles, for the neck muscles as well. Now, another sort of thing is they call this a seated, quote, pail lift. Now, here's a pail. You don't need a pail, but the idea is it's like you're lifting a pail up like this. This is where you might want to take your household object and do something that looks like this. What this is doing is you're getting an effect at the wrist, because the wrist and the hand are keeping the grip on the object, and I'm working my elbow, and I'm also working my shoulder. And there's no reason why you can't do it like this. Or if you want to get really coordinated, something like this. Begin applying the principles. If I want to train for muscle strength, I'm going to try 8 to 12 reps. If I'm going to try for muscle endurance, I'm going to try 15 to 20 reps. Then rest in between sets, 2 to 3 minutes, and do 1 to 3 sets each time I train. Another sort of thing, I'm going to deviate from the listing here just a little bit. I'm going to use the forward leaning rest as the last one, just as from a standpoint of practicality. Something you can do would be, another one listed there is an arm raise, where you have your household object and you can lift it up like this, out in front of you, or out to the side. I knew that was going to happen. I did practice this, but oh well. So out to the side. And you can certainly get creative, doing it both arms at once, or if you want to have fun. I'm doing this from my office, and right now there are people out in the waiting room who think I have lost my mind, but that's all right. Another situation would be an overhead press sort of thing. Again, I'll use the different household objects here. Something like this, where you basically just kind of lift it up over your head, one arm at a time, or both arms at once. And again, applying the principles of 8 to 12 repetitions for muscle strengthening, 15 to 20 for muscle endurance. Now, the last two will be, I'll show you the forward leaning rest as the last one. One before that, they call a farmer's carry. And this is based upon the stereotype of farmers carrying pails of milk or whatever else. The idea behind this is you put something in your hand, a household object. It certainly doesn't have to be a pail or something like that. And you essentially walk around, because doing this basically works a variety of different muscles. This is a whole body exercise. By walking around with more weight than your normal body, you are creating a strengthening effect in the shoulders, in the hips, in the lower back, in the neck. Just try this, even with a 1 pound weight or a can of corn or something like that. Try this for a minute at home sometimes, and you'll feel the difference that it makes. Just normal sorts of activities, just carrying things in your hands. Now, the last one I'm going to try to show here without falling on my face is that forward leaning rest, which is something such as this, where you safely in control, basically kind of put your arms out in front of you in this position here, where you're basically kind of supporting yourself. And just doing this, you will feel your core, your functional core, your lower back, your abdominal muscles, your shoulder muscles working very, very well. And this is a situation where this would predispose, or as things get better, something we can talk about in the future, that being push-ups or things such as that, more advanced sorts of exercises. Okay. Now, again, there's the question and answer button on the format. If you have questions and answers, or rather, if you have questions, I'll try to answer them as best I can. And now is the time to ask those. Well, first of all, I'm at the Bay Road location. Renew is spread out throughout the Great Lakes Bay region. We all work together in terms of exchanges of information. So if you are, say, viewing this from one of our other locations, certainly contact the Renew clinic closer to you, and they can get in touch with me, or I can get in touch with them. The bottom line, we'll do what we can to get your questions answered and provide the services that would be helpful for improving your strength training. I want to thank you for your attendance before we get into the questions and answer sessions. Again, I'm Kent Timm from Renew in Saginaw at the Bay Road location. You can see the number of 989-401-5282. Please feel free to give us a call if you've got questions or want to set up a free screen or a formal consult. And if you're more inclined to email, please feel free to send me an email, ktim@renewpt.com. Okay. And
we do have a few questions, Kent.
okay, I'll do my best to try to answer them.
Sure. The first one is from someone who has lower back pain between their L4 and L5, and they were wondering about some kind of low stress stretches or strength training that might be helpful.
Excellent question. Basically, if playing the percentages, most, not all, but most forms of low back pain affect that area of L4, L5, and also into S1. The things that we talked about here, these general activities, especially that farmer carries sort of thing, the weighted body walk, is a low-key, low stressor that will help strengthen the areas of the lower back. There are some other sorts of things that are available, but quite frankly, there's so many other possibilities going on that someone with low back pain, beyond just the general sorts of principles we talked about today or the exercises that I just showed as possibilities, really requires a little bit more analysis. So for that particular person, I'd be happy to answer a call from them so I can learn a little bit more about their specific situation and therefore provide a little bit more detailed information for their individual case.
Great, thank you. Another one was from somebody who said for older people with osteoporosis, maybe an easier exercise for the upper back.
Okay, another great question. What you can potentially do for that, I showed the lower back using the towel down here, because that's kind of a generic sort of thing. Let me position this a little bit differently. Show the lower back using a towel. Now, I don't have a high back chair, but if you can imagine a higher back chair or your couch or something, where you're putting the towel kind of unraveled. So I'm going to quickly kind of put this back together. If you can imagine putting this at, say, shoulder level or just above, and then pressing back into your couch or into a high back chair, that'll produce the same sort of effect. So it's a way to hopefully help strengthen your upper back.
Wonderful, that's a great tip. Somebody else mentioned that they want to strengthen their core muscles, but they find some of the, getting on the ground and doing core exercises is difficult. So wondering if there's a more introductory option.
The first introductory option for that would be this standing forward rest, this idea, and granted, I'm just doing this off the desk height in my office. If you have a counter, if you can imagine a counter kind of like this, where you're kind of supporting yourself and leaning into it, this would be the starting point, because as you try this, you're going to find your core is going to start working and probably working very hard to keep you in that position. So that would be the starting point. And as I mentioned for the lower back, there are other things out there, there are other possibilities. And so it might be of benefit for that individual to contact us so we can get a little bit more specific for their needs.
Great. There's one question that I'll answer real quick. Somebody asked if they might be able to have illustrations of these exercises, and we will send a follow-up email that has a summary of the exercises Kent showed today. And Susan asked if you have knee pain, should you hold a squat rather than like squatting and standing? Should you hold it in one place, or should you do rise and lower?
Okay, great question. The big thing with squatting, if you're having knee pain, is first of all, make sure your mechanics are correct. This is where you want the knee to be behind the toe. You probably can't see my toe, but the idea is if my knee, as you're squatting down, gets forward of my toe, that's putting abnormal pressure on the area. Other than that, it becomes a matter of what feels most comfortable. First of all, you should only squat down if you're having knee pain, regardless of where, even, certainly keeping your knee behind your toe, only as far as you feel comfortable going down. If you're squatting and starting to hurt, that's squatting too far. As you go on with exercise, you will find if you're doing correct techniques and applying the exercise principles, you'll be able to get further without pain as the knee adapts. So if you're squatting down and it's hurting, that's too far. In terms of holding it, it's also a situation of comfort. If it feels comfortable holding it, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Great. I think this is the last question, and then you can go ahead and wrap up. But we had a question about ideas to strengthen your hands or your feet.
Okay, in terms of the hands, this is where something like our friend here may come into play. This is just basically a squeeze ball, okay? We have this guy in our clinic, so, you know, to help keep the patient somewhat amused at times. Now, I'm sure we've all done stuff like this. Here's where things can be done a little bit more effectively, specifically for hand strengthening. We don't need to kill the thing. The idea is you squeeze it only as hard as you squeeze it, but then hold it for a good count of 10, a good 10 seconds, a good 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, etc., up to 10. So holding it only as hard as you feel comfortable holding it for a count of 10. And then relaxing it, not dropping the ball necessarily, but relaxing it for a count of 10. People naturally shorten the rest period because they want to get the exercise over and done with. But specifically for the hand, count of 10, comfortable squeeze, count of 10, comfortable relax, gives the tissues a chance to recover, which keeps the pain down and allows the muscles to get stronger. So we call this a 10 by 10 by 10. 10-second comfortable squeeze, 10-second rest, 10 repetitions. That's the format, and that will be very effective for helping develop painless strength in the hand. I'm going to adjust things a little bit more because when it comes to the feet, one thing that is effective, and hopefully you can see this. Now my shoe is black, so you may not be able to see this. But the idea is what you're doing is you're balancing on one foot. Now I'm supporting myself with my hand on the desk. But the idea is you're standing on one foot, essentially as long as you feel comfortable doing this. What this does is strengthen the small muscles of the foot. Once the small muscles of the foot are stronger, the ankle becomes stronger, the knee becomes stronger, and the whole lower limb becomes stronger. So you try this at a time on one foot, and then certainly try it on the other foot. So this is something that's fairly quick, it's fairly easy, but it's very, very effective. So that would be the entry-level point for folks who need to have stronger feet.
That's it. No more questions. So great information, Kent. Thank you for sharing.
My pleasure. Again, I hope this has been helpful for folks. We're here at Renew as a resource. I'm here at Bay Road as a resource. If you have concerns, if you have ideas or thoughts for future webinars, please feel free to get in contact with us. We're here to help serve the patients and the people of the Great Lakes Bay region.
Thank you.